Hey, welcome to No Rules Berlin. It's our fourth episode, and we're super excited to talk today about Callin. And I guess we called the title "If It's the Last Social Audio App," referring to Peter Thiel's famous sentences: "You don't need to be the first mover; you need to be the last mover." And I guess we talk today about the features and insights we discovered so far using the app daily. And I guess, Olja, you with your experience like running metadata and media for Ericsson, I guess that's the first insight I guess we should talk about. What about the metadata in comparison to other social audio apps?
Yeah, so I think early on when we did the first episode, I told you that finally someone understood the importance of metadata, meaning anything from the show type or episode type or whatever to the descriptions and the hierarchies in the data and everything. And why it actually is important is that if you know more granular what it's about, and this might be on the episode level, on the show level, whatever, you can do much better content discoverability, recommend things, I don't know, suggest edits when you produce your episode, etc. So that was the one thing that stood out like straight away for me. Maybe it's because of my point of view with my history, but I think that's like clearly the one point where I thought, yes, someone actually understood that.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. And I see already when I look at the competition of the other shows and how you have some dynamic of the perfect thumbnail, having the right titles. And yeah, I'm already thinking of updating our entire channel. Like a friend of mine said, No Rules Berlin sounds like a fashion brand. So maybe we should work a bit on the logo and the show. But I guess that all has to do with a totally different, professional direction of the product versus something like Clubhouse where it's just random.
Just one more point on that. As you talked about polishing it up, etc. The metadata part is also important because we'll come back to that later when we talk about the features. It's also important when you build then the connecting systems, right? So if this app is the origin where you do the recording and it's so comfortable in the app, etc., then you can also, of course, better connect this thing to other systems. So export to Spotify, if you have already the metadata, that's super easy, or whatever the publication is. So I think that's super important, the metadata part.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the first thing, like I listened to the Callin channel and they were like, this could be similar like Instagram. Back in the days when the iPhone came out, you had the constraint of the phone. And so how can you actually record podcast episodes with the constraints of the phone? And I guess this is the really interesting part, talking about the creation, but then the distribution as well of the, if you really take Instagram as an example, I guess they had two things. Number one was the creation part, and number two was like really the distribution. In the early days, distributing over Twitter, distributing over Facebook. I guess there was 20% of all traffic of Facebook was Instagram pictures at one point of time, something like that. And so I would go into those direct angles and how they approached it from a product point of view.
Yeah, one thing also is when it comes to that is the whole content discovery part. So within the app. So because now we just talked about the metadata, because you have that great metadata and the structures and what have you, just look at the application. I know there's not too many. The good part is there's not too many parts of the application. It's super flat and easy to use. But you see these nuances in the way the application works. If you go to search, you can search by the types. Are you looking for a user, show, etc., etc.? Only possible because you have the metadata and you can differentiate between a show, a highlight, and an episode. Right? The same if you go to a user's profile, you actually can list where this person shows up in which episode or highlight. And then one thing, I'm not sure if you noticed this, but if you go to the notifications or the way notifications work, remember when we used the first time Clubhouse, it was bombarding us, penetrating us with notifications that you could, at some point, you just turn it off, right? So the beginning, that was like the thing that supercharged Clubhouse because you were penetrated with all these notifications of the interactions and what have you from your friends and so on. And now at some point, you just turn it off. And the way they deal with that in Callin is that you get some notifications, but if you then look into the notifications, the crucial important part, which are the upcoming shows, are on top. And then the most recent interesting notifications are then in the second section below the upcoming shows, which I think is quite neat.
Yeah. That's like the notifications at Clubhouse. They perfected it in the beginning, but they should have iterated faster. Fear of missing out at scale, that was like totally getting crazy. Like it's one of the very few apps where I really deactivated all notifications. That was just too much. Yeah, I think that's interesting. Yeah, and I'm going back like the creation part. I think the biggest insight, and we had it at the last episode at minute 50. It was not in the recording, but I remember when we were talking about it. So the beauty is when you know that there's a live version of the episode, and then there is actually the recording, and you know that you can edit the recording so easily. Your conversations are changing, and I feel it with us that we get out of this performative mode into just authentic, unique conversations, and then we know it will disappear now after the show, and we have the control to later publish or not publish. And this creation part, especially for podcasts, and I know 5 or 10 podcast interviews, that it's so much hustle, the performative act of what do you exactly say, how do you do it, and having this done with those 2 episodes live for some people, some audience, but then recorded and you can polish it up. I guess that's from the creation part of things. What I found really interesting yesterday when we were talking about, hey, maybe we changed totally our behavior. I don't know how.
Yeah, there's 2 things to that. One is you get much more comfortable in the conversation. We noticed this in the second episode or so. I think we were commenting on this, where we said, hey, this actually feels like we just get together somewhere in Berlin, we talk about it, and if there's some parts where we feel like we're not comfortable or it doesn't fit the storyline, it's getting confusing, let's just edit out. And the great thing is you can do that within the app. I don't have to export and what have you. But the way we had these conversations, they change. Then I don't have to come with my super prepared notes and think about it and what have you. It's just let's go and let's use the flow and do it, right? So I really like that part. And then the other thing is that it's not either you do it like recording it and editing, etc., and you ditch the part with the fun of the live session, like on Clubhouse, where you have to whatever happens then, and you have this FOMO effect. No, you can still do that. Like all the people listening now, they can listen to it and they experience it exactly like that as it happens. But still, we can polish up the episode and then publish that.
Yeah, and what's so interesting is that when you go back to the Instagram example, before Instagram and before digital, photos were this scarce thing, where when it was analog, like you were exactly thinking like, how exactly do I do this one shot? And because I know it costed effort, it costed money to develop the analog photos. And then when you see Instagram today, people are shooting photos and then they already predict how do they actually appear and how much following and likes do I get because of those pictures. And I guess it totally changed the scarcity element of producing stuff. And when I look at podcasts today, it's such a scarce thing to produce a podcast. It's so much effort. Actually, it's hours of pre-production and production, post-production. And now if we're doing this daily at the moment just for fun, and it's ridiculous, but imagine if we now look at the feedback from the live audience and we actually feel what are interesting topics. It's like we can optimize on the fly for our post editing what could be the most valuable for the audience later on and predict and get live feedback while recording. I guess that's like just changing everything in the art of creation. And it's so cool having it on the phone, to be honest, because like I have my Joe Rogan podcast mic and I have all of that stuff, but the production is just insane. It's so much work. And now you have the AirPods and the phone and whatever. It's fine. And it's cool if Callin actually does the act of getting the audio quality, of improving the audio quality as an app. Similar than Instagram when they did the filters. If you have audio filters and the voice sounds better, like all of that would be amazing.
Yeah, usually you're doing the editing, so I never saw the edit screen just by what you were telling me. For some reason, I'm a co-host, but I can't edit and publish a show. I guess that's like a bug. We're super early on. That might change. But I really like that what you just said. So it's this one app, and we've been on other podcasts, and typically you go on Zoom, you go on Skype, and what have you, and then record it, and whatever you record there, it's get exported, and then they edit it, etc., and then eventually it ends up where it should be. And the nice thing here is that it's all within the app. You just record, you do the editing, and that's it. And it's also published, and you can browse it and what have you. So I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And coming back to and I guess this is the next lesson and insight, like absolutely the killer feature. Maybe I get it wrong from a psychology insight, but that's how I felt about it. I don't know what I clicked the first time I was doing the post-production, but suddenly I deactivated all of the words and the entire transcript, and then I had to manually select what I wanted to have in the show. And I remember that I got lazy halfway through, and then I was like, hey, because I had to tap every single sentence. And then I got lazy, and I was like, actually, we were talking so boring. Let's just swipe through to the end. I guess there was an interesting episode. And so I felt, wow, I have to put in effort what is interesting in order to put it into the post-production. But the beauty is, if I find it boring to go through our own talk, what the hell is it to the user? And so actually making it tap, putting in effort on my side in order to actually get to the best highlights in post-production for the users. I don't know if I got the feature right, but if all my experience with product, you don't just stumble into that. But this, like putting effort in, that was genius. Because I was like, okay, we really have to focus on what is valuable. And maybe the live episode is 10 minutes longer, but in the end of the day, you really want that what goes live later on the other networks like Spotify and co, you want that this is valuable to the user and not just random talk. And I found this is the ultimate killer feature of this app, the post-production, and then distributing it to the other networks.
Yeah, and when I would do a prediction here, I would say that's where Callin will probably invest most likely. With the things that we do at Television Eye, where we help broadcasters and publishers to take away the beginning, like get from a blank sheet of paper to finalizing and polishing your publication. So where you just upload your raw material and then your news story, and it just creates the right edit and what have you. And I think the same thing type of services will be added to Callin at some point, that even that part will be simplified, because if you have the metadata and you can identify direction from the title and description and what have you, and you can look at the transcript and then highlight using different machine learning models what are the key elements in this thing, and you can suggest something, and then you just do 3 taps and it gives you like the polished thing. I think that's the next thing that will actually I would invest in when I would be at Callin. But let me ask you one thing. I had this little moment that reminded me of TikTok when I browsed through the UI. Did you notice that you can export actually the whole episode as the MP3? Because that reminded me a little bit of the situation with TikTok, because there you could also probably still, you can download your TikTok video and upload it on Instagram and what have you. And what that means, I think, or tells me at least, is not winning by login, but actually winning by the features and the content discoverability and finding the right cool addictive stuff. So I like that it's not locked. I can download the MP3. I can edit that in whatever tool I wish. If that's not enough, what I have in the Callin application, even add like ads if I want to, whatever, sponsorings, etc., and then republish it somewhere. So I really like that. This is like already from the beginning, someone thought, hey, let's not lock. People have to exist and do the show here, publish it here. This is where you are. You're not going anywhere. Actually, I like this openness. What's your thoughts there?
Absolutely. I got one of the reasons why we now do this as a hobby, every day an episode those days, just until we get bored, is, well, there is this insight when you do podcasting. And I thought of podcasts to run my own podcast for 2 or 3 years now. And I talk to so many people, and I know so many people in Berlin who have successful podcasts. And one of the insights is that most people, I guess it's 80% or so, don't do more than 10 episodes. And that's really a huge problem in podcasting. It's a long-term compounding game. So you need more and more guests, more and more people. And when I saw this feature that we can export it, it was 100 times more valuable to us, because I was like, hey, if this is fun, we do now a few episodes. If this is fun, we just export it, and then we do some after editing or whatever, and we have our own podcast on Spotify and all the other platforms. And having this as not only a social network and social audio app like Clubhouse, but having this kind of as a creator tool that allows us to generate value and be in the media and create media. I thought that was brilliant, and it actually encouraged me to do more, because if it would just be Clubhouse, well, we talk and then it's gone, I guess I wouldn't put in the effort that we talk. Like we do it once or twice, but now I think it's an amazing feature. And going back to the Instagram, that was one of the key secrets. How could you distribute? Because it was a tool where you could improve your bad iPhone 4, iPhone 3 pictures with the filters, and then you could actually spread them across all the other networks. And I guess that's what Callin is really able to do, that we can spread this stuff over all the other networks. And imagine, some people have 2 or 3 podcasts. Imagine we just do another podcast. I would start it on Callin.
Yeah, it's basically it's less effort, and that's why I say the next wave of things that probably would supercharge the whatever growth or the content, the explosion of content, will be what we saw on Instagram, like you said, with the filters, right? The easy shitty image turned into a nice piece of art, let's say. And the same thing with that jump-started this new wave of creators on TikTok. It is so effortless that a 14-year-old girl can now create these creative short video. Now, out of so many creators, a wave of creators are created, and they can publish so much content. And that I think it's the tools that makes it easy to create. What's, if I had to guess, is the next thing that will come to Callin, I guess. We already see the first steps of that for sure.
And also maybe one lesson or insight that I had coming back to the product features I really would love to have. It's called Callin, and I would love to have a link right now that I can send via text or WhatsApp or whatever to people that they can call into our episode. Because I guess when I see that guests are so important to podcasting, right now I'm waiting, should we invite our network and the people we know and that we want as speakers for certain topics, then they need to download the app. It would be really amazing if, I don't know if it's on the product roadmap or not, but it would be so amazing if they could just call in. Like you get a link, just like a telephone number, basically, just like Google Hangouts, Zoom, where you don't even have to have you can call into our podcast, and then we would have them as guests. It would be the ultimate least effort thing ever. Like you would just say, hey, I'm on Callin tomorrow. Do you want to be the expert speaker? Here's 20 minutes. Here's the phone number. Just call it. That would be amazing. Because this guest finding, and when I talk to the people who run successful podcasts, they say it needs to be 0 effort for the guests, and the more important they are, the more important. And if they could just take the phone and call in, that would be.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can agree 100% with that, because I wouldn't sacrifice the metadata part for that feature. It could come in one way that might be like, hey, you prepare an entry point for a guest, but that has to be described with metadata, like a picture, profile picture, and maybe, I don't know, name, etc. But I wouldn't make it like risk the richness in metadata for that. So it has to be in a way that would ensure that exactly who it is that's talking, you have a face for that person or logo or whatever.
But
it would make sense. It would make sense, but it has to be a managed and nice, rich
but
way of getting in.
Imagine we would have an invite link, invite a guest, and this and we would set up the picture, we would set up the name, we would do this, and then you basically enter the phone number or whatever, and you're like, hey, and now give this personal, like Google Hangouts, when they have the call numbers, they have basically those commas that they go and route through their systems. And so it would be a personalized calling number, and the moment this number would call in, it would match with the picture and the profile, and then it would be added just like a normal speaker, but the person would call in with a phone. That's what I would love to have, because it would be zero effort for the people, just like jumping on a Zoom, but like with the phone number. And then I totally agree with you. That would be really nice when actually you have all the metadata, that it looks if the person would have had that.
Yeah, exactly. Without sacrificing the metadata, basically. And by the way, the stars are aligned for that, because that Twitter, I think they introduce or are about to introduce this new share cards where you have where you share content, but there's a special way of sharing it. Like they have this nice card design, etc. And you could design this type of things, call in and what have you, like invite and what have you. So that there's things, but again, without sacrificing the metadata, I think. But I think it makes sense, like what you said, inviting someone as a one-off or whatever. Yeah, why not? It's super easy to install the app, but still, it makes sense. Yeah. So what's your thought? What do you think, besides the call-in, is like the next thing of an existing feature to improve, or what's your wish? If you would have to, you could make one wish, what would be the thing that you would like to change or improve or add or whatever it is?
The post editing. I worked so much with transcripts the last 6 months, and the AI is getting better and better. But for example, like when you look at the big transcription services like Trint and Descript, like why can't we have a vocabulary? Why can't we like that you add vocabulary and then it basically matches that those are the right words? Because I notice a lot when you want to have the best metadata and you want the transcript to be searchable and you want to publish that later and download the transcript for whatever SEO purposes, it needs to be perfect. And the only way you get to an accuracy above 99% is actually to add vocabulary, because every podcast will be different. So like really investing heavily on the transcription part. Of course, it's an early app, it's a small team, so they can't be good in everything. But I guess the post editing, that's for me as the creator, that's the most interesting feature. And the tapping is genius for now, but I guess post editing, as you mentioned, but post editing going all in, just like Instagram started with one filter, then it was 5, now it's video filters, whatever. That's where I would.
Yeah, and I think if you have issues with this transcript right now, I'm pretty sure that's easy to fix, because we are in the machine learning world quite ahead of turning speech into text and what have you. So yeah, I mean, that I'm sure that will be sorted out at some point. It's quite robust and reliable technology-wise. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Should we take any questions or comments from the audience?
Like if someone
already talking for 20 minutes, like
Yeah, if someone is interested to make a comment, and then I guess while we're waiting, if someone is coming, the question is, and that's the clickbait title: is it the last social audio app? Yeah. What's your thought? What do you think? Do you think it's a real competitor to Clubhouse and to Twitter and all?
Yeah, for sure. We back then we were on Talk Show, which was the pre-successor to like the previous version of Clubhouse, and then we were on Clubhouse, etc. And I was actually surprised that it didn't keep the recording feature. One of the killer features of Callin, I think, is the recordings, because in the beginning of Clubhouse, or back then with Talk Show, we experimented with that a little bit. It was a bit buggy, but of Clubhouse, it was cool. I thought, hey, this is the FOMO effect. They want to cash in on that. But it's so hard once you find 2-3 nice rooms. I think I had one on aviation. I had one on movies and stuff, something on technology. And then, of course, because people live the same way, they go to work, they have that 1 hour in the evening at prime time, they want to all use the same slot. And then it was hard to keep up with that. Am I going on this room or this room? Why can't it gets recorded and then I watch it the next day? And I was quite surprised it didn't take that feature from Talk Show to Clubhouse. Yeah, I think it's definitely a great tool. I'm not that often anymore on Clubhouse, actually maybe once a week or every 10 days, because of these things like I can't make room for all these rooms. And yeah, I think it's definitely with all these features, and it's the tool I would rely on in the future. And it's also fun doing these rooms. And by the way, because of this metadata thing and that you have to create a show, etc., I'm wondering, once it opens up, if it will actually be a natural filter to all these shitty rooms on Clubhouse that we have, like these 10,000 guru rooms and 10,000 like this noise type of channels or rooms. I hope that this thing, because you have a little bit of effort and commitment, that it will actually be like a natural filter to all these stupid rooms, basically.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Yeah. If 10% of all, like, podcasts get created every week. So it's a recurring habit. Like, people, it's not that you create it once, like every week, people, the podcasters. And I guess there's 1 million people who create podcasts right now. So if 1 million people do one every week, it's like 50 million a year. And I guess Callin would be the last social audio app if by next year, in 1 year, like 10 to 15% of all new podcasts that are on the networks distributed were created on Callin. So I don't know, if you would make a small audio watermark, just like Instagram did the image audio watermark into the pictures, if we could scan through Spotify in 1 year from now, and 10%, 15% of all of the podcasts created would be created initially on Callin, then I guess it would be the last social audio app. But that's like how I would measure it if it's really successful.
All right, so let's see.
And then otherwise, thanks so much for listening, and see you soon on Callin.
Subscribe to our show. Thank you.
See you soon. Take care.